Okay, so in this video, we're going to look at going to a deeper dive into constraints and the workflows. And I'm going to talk about all kind of different parameters that we can move and change to get a very similar setup that we have in Maya. So right off the bat, I want to talk about something I did in the previous video and I didn't show, which is how to display my constraints when I play back. So as you can see the constraint here, and by default, usually what you will get is something like this. And unless you press here on your constraint or select it, um, you could press play again and you won't see anything happening. You could probably say turn on temp over there and then try play it and you can see, but you don't see it update. You just see like the way it is at first frame. So the way for us to visualize it, you need to go into the solver because the solver is the part that's going to calculate everything. So we have an actual visualizer that's going to show the calculations of the changing of the verts that are moving due to the constraint. So we can actually go to attach to geometry because that's the type of constraint we are using, as you recall. And once we do that, it's going to show us these constraints. So back to visualizer under um, the Vellum solver, you want to go to visualizer, you want to go to attach to geometry or any of these other types, and then you could change the radius or the color. I think by default it's blue and the radius is like 0.1, which is too big for the scale of my scene. So it really depends on what you guys do. All right, so I've covered that. Let's talk about workflows. So if I go back here, and as you recall, if we look at the way that we've kind of chosen the points that we want constraint, because otherwise it constrains everything. Recall we went to this group here under geometry, went to the geometry, went to group, and we basically grouped all of these points and said, hey, can you grab these points and just hold them there? Now, the problem with this specific method, which is great for if you're just working on one character, but what if you want to make something that's a little more modular? Let's say the character is still under development and the geo keeps on changing its vertex count. Let's say you have a low res at first and then it gets to a high res, or an artist, the client decides they don't want a wrinkle somewhere, so you have to go and remove a wrinkle, which changes the point count, and it just will break everything. So I'm going to show you like ways that you can start thinking around this is by using actual groups to kind of sort this out. So here's a good example of a way to break it. I have a poly reduce here, and if I turn on the poly reduce, you can see automatically, first thing, I get a lot less connections because I reduced the amount, but you can see that it's no longer grabbing the endpoint here. It's just grabbing random points inside here because it's trying to find those points under the list of points that I put it under the group here. So how can we get around it is by creating a group node. So I'm just going to shut that down for a second and turn on the group node. And what I did in the group node is I named the group the way I wanted it to. And then over here, I went down to where it says keep in binding region and ticked on this little enable and then said initialize state and then kind of pressed enter on the keyboard, and then I can change not only the region that is being affected, but I could also grab what is being affected. So in this case, I just want, let's say, the top line, and it will maintain it. Now, a very important thing, that if you have a reduce, you have to have it before the group. Because if you have it after the group will no longer be affecting whatever is above it, because it will be after the fact. So whatever you do, like even if I do turn on the poly reduce now, this is still being affected. If this was after the group, it wouldn't be affected. All right, so you could see that these points are being affected no matter what. Yes, no. All right, so just to prove it to you, we're going to go back over here and go here, and I'm just going to remove all of these points. And since this is being the group type is set to points, over here is set to points. If I go to a drop-down list, you will see it as a group type. Now, one important thing to notice, and this threw me a couple of times, is by default it's primitives, and then I come over here and the clock and says, there's nothing, but I created a group. Why can't I see it? Blah, blah, blah. Reason, it's not the same type. So if I go back to the group and just change it to primitives, and then go back here, and I'll go to the drop-down list, you'll see that it's there. It's not going to work now because the way that I set it, it's it's looking for the points there, or it's looking for whatever's in that region, and since the faces are not in those regions, that's not attaching. So I'm just going to change this back to points, and then we're going to go back here. I'm going to change this back to points, and problem solved. So now even if I turn this on here, you'll see that I'm still connecting everything, and everything's good. With that, I'm going to stop this lesson here, and in the next lesson, we're going to look at how we can animate our constraints and the problems that we might have there, and maybe we'll even talk a little bit about some of the extra attributes that we have here to solve other issues. So see you in the next video.